Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Fires a Weapon webinar. We have currently almost 600 people on the webinar, so we're happy to have you all here. Just a couple of housekeeping things to start off. At the bottom of your Zoom meeting, you'll see a Q&A section. Feel free to ask any questions. We do have people in the room answering those live, and so we will keep that going, and we're going to archive all questions for the future. Additionally, we will be sending out certificates for all participants that come through the webinar. And so look in your email following this webinar, probably a couple of days, but we will generate those so you can get some CE credits if your states allow it. So just to start off with some really brief introductions, and then we will kick it off for you. So my name is Hunter Martindale. Next to me is Larry Baldwin. In the room, we have Kent Pippin, Russ Howard, and Pete Blair working the Q&A board, and then I will send it over first to Cliff to introduce himself, and then we'll kick it over to the other panelists in Hawaii.
Good afternoon. My name is Cliff Wojtena. I'm a captain with the League City Police Department, currently assigned to a patrol division and as our SWAT commander.
Okay, and then to the gentleman in Hawaii.
Hi, it's still morning in Hawaii, so good morning and aloha, everyone. My name is Captain Sonny Santos with the Honolulu Police Department, part of our integrated response program with the City and County of Honolulu. Go ahead, Chief.
Good morning, Battalion Chief Alan Carvalho, Honolulu Fire Department. My administrative area includes the Diamond Head area, so I was the first arriving commander for Honolulu Fire Department.
Aloha, Craig Uchimura, Battalion Chief, Honolulu Fire Department, Program Manager for our Active Threat Program.
All right, so just to kick it off, we'll give a quick definition. This is our working definition at Alert. We will be collecting data just like we do our active attack data for FAAW events. So we are currently defining it as the use of fire or smoke in conjunction with additional threat modes. These multiple modes presented in a FAAW require integrated PPE and tactical response from fire and LE personnel to address both environmental and assaultive threats to responders and potential victims. Now, what we're talking about are events that have a law enforcement response, so a active attack, a hostage barricade, and at some point the assailant lights a fire somewhere and compounds the issue. And as everybody in this webinar is, I'm sure, aware, Hawaii had one such event, and they graciously volunteered to give us a debrief of that. So we're going to start off with that part of it, and then we'll go to some questions after that. So I will go ahead and turn this over.
Hi, good morning. This is Cap Sonny Santos from the Honolulu Police Department. So just a quick overview of the Hibiscus Drive event that occurred in the Diamond Head area, very close to Waikiki on January 19, 2020. So the island of Oahu is kind of the focal point for the state of Hawaii. Our state capital, Honolulu, is here. Our local population here is just under 1 million. Our police force is about 1,800 officers, 300 to 400 civilian support staff. That's Diamond Head we're looking at right there, and at the, I guess on the right side of your screen, you can see that's the area where the incident happened. I'll let Craig give out the stats for Honolulu Fire, the personnel and such.
So Honolulu Fire Department is all career, fully paid, 43 fire stations. On any given day, we have about 330 personnel on duty at any time.
And for our EMS folks in the room, I think we have about 300 EMS total workers. They typically run about 20 ALS rigs a day. They are extremely short-staffed, but they do a great job here for us in Honolulu. Next, please, Hunter.
If I can add one thing real quick at this time. the city county of Honolulu, all three of us, our agencies, all work for the same government agencies. So we're integrated in that sense. Even though we're different departments, we all work for the same government. So our jurisdiction and boundaries are all the same. Sorry.
This is an overview of where you're looking at Diamond Head. The red circle depicts the scene where the incident occurred. Next. Did you have anything there, AC?
Oh, no.
So this is just a street map. The red house obviously is where the shooting had occurred on Hibiscus Drive. So here, yeah, we refer to Hibiscus Drive. This is the Hibiscus incident. Next, please. This is a timeline of what had occurred for when the 911 call came in. It came in as a domestic argument. Initially, it did not come in as a stabbing. The officers later determined that arriving on scene after the first officer arrived. First officer arrived, realized a female occupant of the house had been stabbed by the suspect. Yeah, just to put it into perspective, the house is a two-story dwelling. The backside of the house is there's a driveway where the suspect lived on the bottom portion of the house. He was kind of a handyman. And the landlord and a tenant lived upstairs. Inside of the house, there's a stairway connecting the downstairs dwelling to the upstairs dwelling. So what we didn't know initially was that the suspect attacked the landlord in the house. The upstairs tenant came to check, heard noises downstairs, came to check on the landlord. And when she tried to check on the landlord, she was attacked by the suspect. The tenant was able to flee the house. Neighbors called 911 and she awaited for first responders on the sidewalk. When they arrived, they saw that she had been stabbed with some sort of item, and that's when they knew there was some kind of a domestic argument with a weapon. The first officer applied a tourniquet to her right leg, the victim, and waited for additional officers. Once the three officers got there, they were familiar with this male from previous police encounters, and they walked up to the door as they would any of the previous times, at which time the first officer was ambushed. The suspect fired a rifle type weapon from within a concealed position, a barricade position in the dwelling, and shot the first officer outside of the protective area of her body armor. There was the other officers ran for hard cover. There was a lull. They were trying to call for additional resources, set perimeter, and set up a rescue team to recover the second officer. They were able to do so a few minutes later, remove that first officer from the scene. And with other officers pinned down, a contact team was being formed to help remove the officers that were pinned down behind cars in a garage. When that was being formed, the second officer was shot again from a concealed ambush position by the suspect. There was a little. Well, once the shots were fired, there was, as you can tell, there was kind of panic and uncertainty of where he was. So a lot of the officers went for hard cover, and so there was a little delay in recovering the officers that were shot. They were trying to cover windows and doors, trying to get more resources in there. And once they got resources in there, they were able to pull the second officer out and get them to an ambulance. On the EMS side, on the early side, EMS did not know what was going on at all. They responded to a domestic argument. They came on scene. They assisted the first tenant who had a laceration, and then they were overwhelmed when the first and second officers were brought to the ambulance. Once the request for all available officers come in, as you guys can probably from previous shooting events, the roads were inundated with first responder vehicles that hampered a little bit in additional ambulances getting into the incident area. Once they got the officers and they're injured out, the patrol officers set up perimeter behind hardcover and was waiting for SWAT response because it was a barricaded suspect. So they were holding and waiting for SWAT to ensure the suspect would not leave. The suspect, upon seeing this, ignited the dwelling on fire. Additional rounds were popping off. The house had several firearms and ammunition stored. So it was unclear if the suspect was shooting or if rounds were popping off. That also threw confusion into the incident. The police department held the firefighters back. You'll see later on the map there are key corners, but the incident command held the firefighters back because we didn't want any other first responders hurt until we knew exactly where this guy was and we could contain it. The homes were evacuated fairly quickly after the second officer was shot. So we knew that there weren't any more civilians in the surrounding houses. I don't know if you want to talk, AC, more to the fire suppression side on the timeline?
Not yet.
Okay. So about 10, there's other injects getting thrown in. There was a gas leak. This area of Honolulu is probably one of the first original kind of Gold Coast areas for Honolulu. So a lot of the utilities are well over 80 years old. So there was a gas leak on the gas line. The shutoff valve didn't work. We tried to get a gas company rep to come out on a Sunday. So a lot of different things were happening while we were trying to manage the scene. Next, please.
Just a moment.
I kind of went over the law enforcement perspective already. The upstairs tenant was attacked. The landlord was in the suspect's dwelling in the bottom. We didn't know what kind of weapons he had initially. Officer Enriquez was shot. It's a one-shot fatal with a rifle round. Contact team was formed to try and help remove the other officers that were pinned down while the contact was being formed. Officer Kaulike Kalama was shot. Immediately after that, the supervisor ordered everybody behind hardcover. Next. Yeah, we talked about this already, most of this stuff, the fire starts. We had the evacuation of the neighbors, of course, you know, civilians don't really understand what's going on. They want to do their own thing, so controlling that was an issue. The fire spread to multiple dwellings. We had 200 plus responders. And then after the initial attack of the scene, we had to manage the crime scene for 5 days. So there was a lot going on. Of course, emotions are high. Hot zone treatment. We had to make sure we had good decon set up. We didn't really know what was going on at the house, what he had there. He was a barricade suspect. We didn't know who else was in there. We knew the landlady and him possibly. Some of the issues are PPE for officers. So we had crime reduction unit officers who were kind of like our mid-level between the patrol officers and the SWAT folks. They get additional training, and there are patrol officers that respond. They were there with long guns. They stood next to the fire and ladder companies while the firefighters were trying to put out the fire without PPE and just basically sucking smoke, providing cover for the firefighters. They stood next to the firefighter with their long guns and did their best to protect them from trying to use the apparatus as cover. Accountability for law enforcement was great. We had multiple responding districts. It initially overwhelmed the area lieutenant. Critical incident management afterwards was a big deal for law enforcement. A lot of officers still not back on the job because of the incident, because of the high emotions. Something that we're dealing with now. Next, please. For the EMS perspective, we kind of already talked about it. They did not know what they were getting into, and neither did the police department initially. But shortly thereafter, we were able to push that information out. Like I said, we have 20 rigs, 20 ALS ambulances for the whole entire island population of 1 million. So calling for additional resources was an issue initially, but once we got the fire boss, police boss, and EMS boss linked up at the command truck, it went a little smoother. Communication challenges using the interoperability channels is an issue. We hardly have to use them, but through the air training and a lot of our training, we're trying to incorporate utilizing the interop channels more. Go ahead, AC.
So on the fire department side, we recognize that this is, well, I guess I'll even start back. Initial call was for an injured person. We're sending one resource from HFD. We noticed a lot of HPD officers going by, so we checked our MDT, checked the notes, and it said injured police officers, multiple. So I told our other resource that's stationed with us, we're going to respond anyways, because that's our brothers in blue. We're going to back them up. Upon arrival at scene, as described, there was patient care being performed. We had firefighters who took over the role of providing patient care with MS and transporting them to the hospital. HPD officers had set up the perimeter and had cover. Rounds were going off at that time, so I instructed our personnel, we're going to stand by, recognizing it's a law enforcement incident in command. So we took cover until law enforcement gave the clear that we could move in. There were several other things that came up besides the fire. Law enforcement did a great job of clearing the other structures. So after arrival on scene, no further loss of life or injuries, which is a good thing. It's hard for us to do, especially as first responders, to step back and be cautious in our approach. And we lost several homes, but no further loss of life or property. Further loss of life or injuries after arrival on scene. There was some talk about, and I'm familiar with the area where the suspect was at. We hear rounds going off. It's a suspect still in that barricade, that hardened barricade. Had the suspect moved and relocated, because within that area there are several easements, so to speak, where you can go from north to south or east or west. Did that person go down? Could you get straight to the beach from there? Did that person move? There were some talks of maybe the person had moved to the suspect to another building to get another vantage point. So we all took our time. Eventually, when the scene was securing up, we were going to start with firefighting operations. Our personnel were escorted in by law enforcement who were not in personal protective equipment, SCBAs, breathing apparatus, and our personnel were. I give them a lot of respect for that. Law enforcement, I do anyways. I have an uncle who was a deputy chief, so much respect for them. Initially, for us, firefighting, defensive operation. Other than to one structure, mostly defensive operation. We're fortunate on a few things. Because of the location, we can look at the map. We're able to almost surround the area. We had a good four ways we could enter there. Looking at that map, we have, if you notice, engine 22 and 33 on one side, engine 5, ladder 5 on another, ladder 7 and engine 7. So we could kind of surround all the structures. In addition to what benefited us, we had a large, if you guys can go back later and look at the pictures, there's a large Kapilani Park there. It's an open public park. We set up our command post there. So we're lucky we had that site that enabled us to set up and stage our additional resources, in addition to meeting up with HP and EMS. We had our staging companies there, we had our rehab there, we had whatever else we needed. So we're lucky that we had that as well. For fire, Another benefit is as soon as we showed up, it's our training. I'll mention that now. We've done active threat training. That training did benefit us. Our personnel moving in undercover with police officers is something that we trained. Although it wasn't in a situation like this, we were much more comfortable going in with trained, at least the basic training that we had. In addition, showing up to the command post, it was easily identifiable. Me as the fire department incident commander, immediately linked up with HPD's incident commander and started coming up with a plan and a drawing. The other good thing, like I mentioned, is that all of our agencies work for the same government department. So we know each other. On my personnel and for me personally, I know those two officers because we have responded with them. The HPD officers in command showing up to the scene, I have worked with them before. I've worked with Captain Sonny for many years now. So we have these relationships. We have this respect for each other, and we have this understanding of our role. So that really helped us out as well too. On the fire department side, standing back, like all first responders, tough for us to do. We want to go in there. You know, we've had people coming up, she's still in there, you guys gotta go. Another lady coming up, my kids are in the house, you guys gotta get them out. All those things come into play, and we really had to control our emotions that day. And like again, I give props to HPD and EMS, a lot of the firefighters for standing up that day. For us, defensive operations, HPD had cleared most of the buildings. They were cleared and evacuated. So at that point, tough to do, but we just defensive operations, surround and drown, and then get into the investigation mode. On the gas leak side, a little bit of an issue. One good thing, I told the guys, let it burn. Let it burn. It wasn't burning, it wasn't expanding anymore. I knew where it was. I could control the fuel by letting it just burn. It was a Sunday afternoon, so it was hard to get the gas company. So we were able to shut off one, but there was a main that they had to shut off. But it was just flaming at one point. It wasn't hindering any of our operations, impinging on any other structures, so we just let it burn to shut it off. So something to consider at that. I'll mention it now since I'm talking about evacuations and training. Across the street, there are 3 7-year-old children that were in a house. They staged there until the house got filled with smoke, and then practiced their fire evacuation plan, exited the structure, made it out, and we reunited with the family. So a few things with that. One is training at all levels, even as young as children, as young as 3 7-year-olds. I did training on fire safety, enable them to safely get out of the house. Even though it was across the street and filled with smoke, they had practiced their fire escape plan just the night before. They executed it and got out safe. So that's all I have for now. Thank you, guys. Anything else right now?
No. This is kind of some of the shots from that's on the web by a female neighbor. It's the view of on the I guess that's the one side of the house, huh? Or you guys are A.
Alpha, yeah. So that's the street side. She was walking her dog. I guess she knew the landlord. She knew there was a disturbance going on. So these are just screenshots of some videos that she took, and it shows a very rapid progression of the fire. So you can go to the next one. So you see a guy with one of the officers with the long gun already posted up. He pushed her to the back of the house, and very rapidly, by the time she got to the back of that house across the street to get farther away, it pretty much looked like this. So this was a civilian drone that was put up early in the incident, and you can see the initial structure with the police car right in front in the driveway. That's the structure that the suspect was in. So you guys clearly understand the street level. There's just one floor, and then it goes down a driveway. That's another perspective farther up on Diamond Head looking down. can go to the next one, please. So you guys can talk about the Horn Electric cutting the grid up. I think they did that early on.
So part of, typically for fire department, we're gonna secure utilities that we can, such as electrical power and gas, so we can eliminate and try reduce the amount of hazards. I won't speak for law enforcement. I know sometimes they'll do that to control a scene, to cut off power to a building so that they have control over that. But for us, on the fire department side, that's risk management, reducing some of the hazards, such as turning off the gas and electricity. Next.
Yeah, speak to this one, Craig.
So obviously this is the before shot, just a Google Earth. Red box is the initial suspect location. And again, to give you that another perspective, you can go forward one more slide, please. You're gonna see the driveway. So that driveway goes down. It goes down where you see that little yellow area is where the officers were shot. So there's wooden slats on that bottom level of the house. Like Captain Santos was saying earlier, the suspect was barricaded farther in to the structure, so he probably wasn't seen very easily. But just to give you a better idea, it's a very narrow driveway going down. It's a funnel. That's basically what the area looks like or looked like. Aftermath, and again, you can see the red boxes where the suspect was held up, lost several structures around the area, and I believe the next slide was just shot a couple days ago. I'm sorry. This was from the police standpoint. Cap Santos can talk about this one.
This is a drawing of the police, the incident commanders, the mock-up of what was happening. Initially, it was done on the back of a police vehicle on the white trunk, and then once the command truck got out there, it was chaos. They just ripped this out and they went quickly. So as you can see on the four corners, we didn't know what engine company it was. We knew there was a apparatus there because Chief here was hip to hip with our law enforcement command. So we were able to plot out where where our engine companies and our ladder companies were. You can see on the top right, next to HFD, there's like a box. It's supposed to be it's a Bearcat. It says FBI. The FBI brought out their Bearcat, and then HPD's Bearcat was on the same street on the opposite end, kind of providing a cover for the engine companies, and also we were using it to pull out officers on the inner perimeter. So we used the Bearcat for those purposes. Obviously the big box with the S and the S and the X is where the suspect's dwelling was. The top street is Hibiscus. The bottom street is Diamond Head Road. And that's just our down and dirty map we had that day to try and manage what was going on. Next, please.
It's just the board that we use for our air class. It's just basically magnetic game pieces to give the guys an idea of the ICS system. Contact teams on the top left. It's just a nice to know. You won't always know which officers responded first. We got your unified command. We have our RTFs, and we, you can see our CCP, casualty collection point areas over there with our triage colors. So this is just something that we use for all the agencies when they come through for the multi-agency training.
Yeah, we're really, sorry, you can go back to that one, Hunter. So we're really trying to train our frontline supervisors. They might not have this board, but to understand the concept and put it on the back of a squad car or whatever it is to try and manage resources. So we basically we adapted the air class using this. Chief Craig is very analytical. So he came up with this, and we're just utilizing this to track resources. And law enforcement is a big paradigm shift for law enforcement, other than if you're in a tactical team, to understand resources and coordinating where people are at. So trying to get that to the everyday patrol sergeant and lieutenant is it's a task that we're trying to get done. Next. Yeah, for the challenges, it was a routine call. We went through this this place many times. The suspect had mental issues. They thought it was just an argument. I mean, multiple calls. We have arrested this suspect prior for mental health observation. One thing was the landlord. The landlord's husband, who passed away several years, was a avid gun collector. So when we did not know the suspect had access to those. So when we do our normal check of our suspects, their names, like if we're running the name and not running the address for firearms checks for the law enforcement folks, that's something we need to be aware of. We're running a suspect name, but not running the dwelling, the house address. So something we're learned the hard way that we need to do. Of course, communication is key. Chaos initially, not until we got a formalized structure, we're able to go to some of the interop channels and coordinate effort. That really wasn't an issue for us because EMS, fire, and law enforcement was joined at the hip. There was a lot of Monday night quarterbacking on why the police department held back firefighters. Like, to us, it was a no-brainer. There's a lot of critics that aren't on the arena. They're not on the floor. They don't, it is what it is. We made every effort to make sure no one else would get hurt, and that's where we stood. And I think our chief did a good job in shutting down the media on that. They tried to spin that a little bit. Gas leak. So like for the fire guys, a gas leak is not a big deal, but for the PD guys, we're like, wait, where's the gas leak? Like we're thinking, it's gonna impact all of us. We don't really know. That's not our lane. So just communication on that. When we're on that, we join at the hip and we can hear the engine officer calling in. Was Cap Kiana, right? She called it in. Many of you know Kiana. She's one of the alert adjuncts. She called it in on the radio. Everybody recognized it. Oh, we have a gas leak. I'm like, what? So that was afterwards. We can laugh about it. The fire department, like, yeah, it's nothing, Sonny. So, but for us, we're like, I don't know. The media was pretty good. We set up perimeter. I mean, other than the typical Monday night quarterbacking, but that was shut down pretty quick. Next. You guys want to talk about this?
Sure, I'll mention real quick about going back to the gas leak. In addition to our regular fire suppressions, the fire department has 2 technical hazardous material teams and 2 technical rescue squads. One of our hazardous material teams was here, was there, and I had them address and assess the gas leak. If it was a tank or something else, it would have been a bigger deal. They were able to find one shut off one, the other one was good to go. Our technical rescue company showed up, and typically we assign them as our rapid intervention team to do rescues of downed firefighters. So I had them link up with HPD SWAT personnel, and they were our rapid intervention team. Like, again, I'll say the good thing is meeting the HPD SWAT officers is not the first time. I've worked with them before. In Honolulu, we've had other big, besides the more recent APEC, we had Agent Development Banking, which was several years ago. So we've had these times and opportunities to train and build relationships with our brothers in blue. I have their numbers in my cell phone, and we've done other jobs. So that's really helped out as well. Rehab. Something the fire department has, very much so, that we're really stressing for. For us, we have it written within our SOGs for a few things. We're going to recycle people after a certain amount of time of physical activity or going on air, such as the SCBA, the breathing apparatus, and then we send them to rehab. One is for nutrition, hydration. Another one, we actually have them do medical monitoring as well. So we're lucky. I mentioned to Sunny real quick saying that, hey, Sunny, by the way, after a few hours, I started feeding my guys. Okay, how are we going to feed all the hundreds of people there? So we tried to pawn it off to our Department of Emergency Management. We had kind of activated them. They don't have a budget for it. So something to consider, that many people rehab in addition to physical needs. There's the medical needs, make sure they're okay to go back. In addition to that, mental needs of our individuals. Sometimes there's as we mentioned, high stress, high emotions. In fact, one of my guys went into rehab and I couldn't let him go back in to firefight, so I took his whole crew out. His heart rate and blood pressure stayed elevated. FBI, great support. And that's it for me for this.
So yeah, just to get through this slide, like we would be remiss to not acknowledge the support from outside agencies outside the city and County of Honolulu. So American Red Cross helped us with sheltering of all the people that we evacuated. We used the American Red Cross headquarters here in Hawaii as a staging area for resources. The City Department of Emergency Management set up the EOC, helped us with feeding hundreds of first responders. We eventually got the EMS boss to kick in his city P card, and we got the Zippies, for those of you who know Zippies from Hawaii. We got Zippies for everyone, and then and even coordinating with the bus company to get the evacuees out of our staging area in Kapilani Park to shelters. Great community recovery, and it was all through relationships and personalities and training with folks prior. So without, we're probably missing a lot of agencies, but we had a lot of good help. Next. Go ahead, Greg.
No, so this slide kind of sums it up. There's a big fire. Suspect is barricaded. Unknown if there's any more hostages or civilians in the structure, but it was just the safety of the responders was paramount. So that this picture kind of sums up the scene. Next. Investigation process. So like Capsani said, it was days and days, and because it was I think 5, if not 6 structures completely burnt all the way down. It's a lot of sifting through debris that needed to be done to recover firearms. The individuals, suspect and the victim, along with whatever firearms and other evidence was needed to be collected at the scene.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge the FBI in that last photo. There, if you guys are not linked up with your local area FBI evidence response team, they were great. They brought like 20 evidence techs, buckets, shovels. It basically was a big archaeological dig site, and they were great. Go ahead.
So this is again a Google shot that you saw. Next, the aftermath, and the next shot was just a few days ago actually. So a lot of debris has been cleared away. If you got construction fences up, and it's a lot of it is cleared out. I think that might be it. Next should be the last slide.
Yeah, and then again, we honor Officer Enriquez and Officer Kalama with this presentation, and we hope y'all can take lessons learned, and we're willing to redo this again if need be. We'll coordinate through the alert office there, but thank you guys very much. Mahalo.
So Cliff, have you guys had a FAAW event, or do you guys train with your local fire department EMS for FAAW events, or have tactical plans in place in case they do there in League City area?
In our jurisdiction, we have not currently had a fire as a weapon event. We do train with our fire and EMS for our active shooter response. In an instance where fire would be used as a weapon, we would work off of that plan. I do believe that there's more discussion that needs to happen in relation to if fire goes defensive, we need to have those conversations with how we would then protect them. If we do need to be offensive with a fire, how would we get the hoses to those locations, whether it be our armored vehicles, whether it be training some of our officers in heavier armor to learn how to simply use hoses, what some basic attack techniques might be. it would all depend on the situation. Again, I know the winds of change move slowly as far as, since it hasn't affected our immediate area or a jurisdiction close to us, the time and the funds haven't been allocated appropriately for a problem that we haven't experienced yet. With the regular training regimen that our officers have now, it's hard to find time to then put in something that we haven't experienced yet. We do try to build, free thinkers among our officers and our firefighters the same way, so that they could then cater existing plans to meet that type of problem.
So we got a couple questions. Sonny, Craig, does the fire department have TAC medics assigned with SWAT?
Mike is on.
Yeah, Mike's on. Are we? Yeah.
You can answer that one. The fire department has gone through the TECC course, but Cap Sonny can answer as far as the TAC medics.
For the SWAT side of the house, yeah, our guys going to TECC. We get some tactical TEMS training, so we work that through our EMS here.
And what about on the fire side? Are bulletproof vests, TAC vests available on the units, on the rigs?
We're currently in the process. We were awarded a Homeland Security grant, and we're in the process of getting plate carriers and ballistic helmets right now. It's going to be one per seat on the truck, like a SCBA.
Is this the only fire as a weapon event that y'all have had experienced in Hawaii? Have you had other fire as a weapon events besides this one?
Yeah, I don't think we've had anything like that. Like, even as a diversionary tactic, I can't recall.
I can't recall either where there was an active threat and a fire. Just recently, the other night, I had another almost a neighborly dispute. I'm presuming footage. 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody walking over and lighting fire to a residence, a detached residence. It started a fire there, but no injuries. But it was another intentionally set fire.
Yeah, I think last year there was a couple incidents in Waikiki where guys starting small fires in the hotel as a diversionary tactic to get everybody out, and then he would be breaking into the hotel rooms. Smaller things like that.
Yes, we did, and I was on with some of those calls, and then, as Cap Sonny had mentioned, the crew guys would show up, and they would go through and check all of the rooms on that floor. So small fire, intentionally sit in the hallway, people evacuate. Suspects are going into rooms and taking computers and personal items. So there was that. We know we've had, I can say in the past, we've had another incident, now if I think about it, that there was a fire intentionally set. Suspect waited inside of the room and wanted to injure the firefighters as they entered. He wasn't that prepared because he didn't have a breathing apparatus on. He actually ran out of the building past the firefighters. Eventually, he was caught downstairs trying to go because he was the occupant, but those incidents have happened. And I was there at that scene as well. So it could have been an active threat. He just wasn't prepared enough. If he had a breathing apparatus or some kind of, he could have stayed in there and intentionally harmed the firefighters unknowingly. So.
As far as, so I know in every incident we've ever had, there's things went right, things went wrong. If you could go back and find 3 things that I wish would have been better, both police side and fire side, can you pick 3 that the guys should train on or we should be aware about in the future if this happens? Maybe have emergency management in the command post would be one, but just give me some examples without game planning too hard on the fire. So
I think one of the things we recognize for the police department is that our mindset is that it's my beat, it's my geographical area. Another district or another precinct is not coming into our area. So being able to say, okay, Lieutenant Sonny, you got the scene. The next precinct coming over, Lieutenant Smith, you got perimeter and traffic control. So those type of things, really pushing unified command response and ICS to the field supervisors, right? It's a learning thing for everyone, and dealing with that. The one thing that on the initial response, and we train them in air, right? Don't block the main drag, the main road, right? And again, I arrived on scene. They saw me get out of my car. The first words out of my mouth was, "Where is my working lane?" And then it was asses and elbows to move cars, right? So that we quickly, but it's chaotic. They hear officer down. They hear cops screaming on the radio. They hear TIF is down on the radio. So it's heart wrenching, and they just want to get there and do the rescue, get that cop out and get him to the hospital. So all of those things, it's easy for us to say in training, but when you get punched in the nose, I mean, it is what it is, right? So we managed well. Our goal is to continue training. We try to do pre-COVID. We were doing one air class a month for fire, EMS, and PD. We're trying to hit everybody. And like a month before this, like those of you know, like we had our shooting at Pearl Harbor, right at the Naval Yard. So it was a military person in there, right? So like that was another thing. So how are we linking up with first responders on the base, right? The military police, Fed Fire. So we December and January was not a good month for us here, and we were trying to learn what went wrong in December, and then we get hit with January. So those are some of the things that we're working towards.
Something also like Cliff was alluding to is working with PD with their Bearcat to deploy a portable monitor to set up some hose lines. Even in RTF type format, guys with shields up, and you got a couple firefighters. The limiting factor is that you're dragging a bunch of hose with you to set it up. That would be nice. The other thing is the RTF deployment, but into the hot zone. So I know there's a lot of controversy with that, bounding approaches and whatnot. And in the air class, we stress you guys not going to go into a hot zone, not going to go into a hot zone. It's going to be a warm zone. But incidents like this, it's all of the what ifs that need to be worked out ahead of time, and it may call for a little extra risk, and we got to figure out ways to mitigate that ahead of time. But just things like that we may have to start looking at.
Yeah, I agree with those two things. In the fire department, we operate in 3 modes. Initially, is investigation, offensive, defensive. Just like I said, we operate in a defensive mode. If we did have a hose that could be deployed, and there are remote control, a drone that can actually pull a fire hose and at least start some firefighting efforts. I think we ordered one.
No, we're looking at it. So there's a company on the East Coast that makes one of those robots. It's a big robot that can shoot anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 gallons per minute. We're looking at the feasibility of purchasing one of those. We're looking at trying to get a grant for Lenco's Firecat. So it's basically the Bearcat with it's piped to shoot some water. And again, you could order a tank and a pump that you can tow behind it to shoot some water, or you could tether yourself with the fire hose and things like that. It's just all we need is more money. That's all.
We're ordering. Our SWAT is ordering. What do you call those nozzles we put on the Bearcats for the fire? Is that the monitor?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've already used. We're going to use Homeland Security money for that. Outfitting the PD Bearcat while we have it, so that there's some kind of capability and cross training with fire. so we can figure something else out that's not working for us now.
So I saw in the drawings the elevated master streams were behind structures. Who was directing from the were LEOs directing the folks running the elevated master streams through the radio, or how was police talking to fire? Did you have a fire rep up there who was able to kind of see the area and direct the streams and that, or did we just stick a big fog nozzle and just let it pattern down? How did that work?
So as the fire department's incident commander, in coordination with police incident commander, we coordinated. In fact, I had another battalion chief on scene. So if you look at the diagram, I gave the other battalion chief half of the companies to command, and I commanded the other half. I communicated directly face-to-face with HPD and radioed this communication to my personnel who worked face-to-face in addition with HPD. And that's how we initiated our attack, through direct face-to-face and then radio communication to my crews and then my secondary division commander, so to speak. But that's how we got to a point where HPD was comfortable with us working up to, and then that's where we initiated our fire suppression efforts. Good question, thank you.
Craig and Sonny, how would you design some training for a fire as a weapon? And Cliff too, how would you guys set this up for the future? Because I know that in Honolulu for sure you guys will be doing some fire as a weapon training from here on out. Cliff, how would you set that up? What would you be looking for as a SWAT commander and police captain?
Well, initially, I believe that we need to give our officers a foundational understanding of fire in and of itself. For us, in our rescue attempts, time is going to be our biggest competitor there in the onset of a fire. And we need to make sure that officers have some understanding of how that clock plays in. If it's a small structure like the Honolulu fire, where it's a residential structure, our base level understanding is that structure could be fully engulfed in a matter of 5-6 minutes. So if any attempt for us to make a successful rescue of individuals inside of that structure would have to be launched in those minutes. Once the structure becomes fully engulfed or the smoke is so thick, we have no chance of a successful rescue at that point. Our typical officers aren't carrying bunker gear or SCBAs. We don't have the knowledge of 3 minutes into the fire or something, are we going to have flashover in the room? We just don't understand that at the rank and file patrol level. So I think a basic understanding of fire knowledge is really important if we believe that this is going to become the weapon of the future. Unfortunately, as we turn on our TV sets every night, fire as a weapon is becoming more and more predominant in the riot. So it's not a sophisticated weapon. It doesn't take a lot of knowledge to use, and it's definitely a force multiplier to be used against our first responders if that's how our bad guy chooses to use it. So understanding those limited time frames that we have for rescues, I think, is very, very important. I believe if we end up starting to have an integrated response such as RTFs, we need to make sure, or we use the RTF concept to push an offensive rescue into a structure that is on fire. We need to be able to have some of those assets such as SCBAs and stuff available to our officers. Even though fire would happily give them to us, our officers don't know how to use them. We've never really been in them, so we're going to use a ton of air probably. So we say we've got a 45-minute bottle that we may suck down in half that time because we've never been in that type of an environment. So we need to have some of those basic understandings of how to use that equipment. I think that would be great to have as part of any program or training for rank and file officers.
Right on. Craig, you got anything? Can you add something to that? What Honolulu you think is going to look like?
I totally agree with what Cliff is saying, and wind direction, all those tactical things that come into consideration, and even further as the event expands. And like Cliff alluded to, it could be in a high rise, and you know, the terrorist propaganda is telling guys to disable fire department connections and sprinkler systems and block exits and things like that. But also the unified command. I cannot explain how, from my point of view, I was on duty that day, but I'm on the west side of the island, and I had to hold myself back from driving to the southeast part of the island to participate. All I could do was dispatch the mobile command center and my drone guys. That was it. I was like, hey, okay, I can send that. But from a unified command ICS standpoint, I think it was invaluable for these guys to know the system, how it's supposed to work, and have that pre-made relationship. I think that is very critical. We often overlook it because we talk to each other a lot and we work with each other a lot, but that is invaluable right there. You know, you could have a scene where the LE asks the fire guys to do something and you don't have that comfortable relationship, and you're just going to get a timeout. Let's talk about this. We're not going to go in. You got other issues. You got to bring in the unions early because you're going to have that aspect on that end. But planning for the worst and trying to drill it, it's going to be complicated, you know. But Sonny and I were discussing the other day how we could develop exercises based off of this. It was an ugly situation. You know, it's a fatal funnel. Officers going down a driveway to a suspect that they did not know was armed, and he's set back. He's not standing in a window where you can see him, and fire gets lit up a little after that, and it was a really tough situation. I'm not sure. We're coming up with some ways, like we alluded to, the RTF concept of using force protection for the firefighters, and that's one of the things in talking to a bunch of the firefighters that were at the scene. They were very appreciative that we had guys up with long guns, you know, and because we had trained that RTF concept, they had some sense of security, you know, standing up on the fire truck, exposed, trying to figure out where that stream is going, but you had guys, you know, standing around looking out for them.
I want to take a moment just to thank all four of our panelists. This was a great conversation, great presentations. Greatly appreciate your time being available and putting on this webinar. We had 750 people come in and watch. So big round of applause to everybody. As you can see on your screen now, there's an email address, research@alert.org. Please send us any and all questions you can think of outside of what you already put in the Q&A. We're archiving all those questions, and we'll make sure that everything ends up getting answered, and we'll post it with the video from this. We gave that working definition of FAAW. If you have any suggestions, what you think could be included, we're happy to read all those suggestions. We will start building that database in the near future, so it's good to get a good solid definition down from the very beginning. And if you are receiving our newsletter, you probably saw today that our conference is going virtual, so we wanted to post this up just so everybody here also has that information. You can follow that website at the bottom, alertconference.org. Find out more information about sign up for the conference. If you already signed up, you can figure out refunds or bringing more people or the different options that are available for you. And we hope everybody's able to join us virtually this year. So one last time, thanks to all four of you. This was awesome. I know I really enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you guys. It's good seeing you. And we'll do it again. We'll do a follow-up for this.
For sure. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Thank y'all, guys. Be safe.
Sir, thank you guys. Thank you, Cliff.